Hello everyone, I'm Hilo from New Leaf Studios, and welcome to the Indie Inquest review panel. My goal here is to investigate some independent comics, most of which can be found on the Sierra Nova Comics platform, identifying the fingerprints of success in each comic, alongside some potential areas of improvement. Alright, so let's open up the case file and get started. Alright, this week's case comes from the publisher Akachi Comics, and they were founded in 2014 or somewhere around there. Their links or handles, they have a Linktree account, so you can find them under Akachi Jones, and then their contact info seems to be best through Facebook at Akachi LLC, and then the date of this inquest is 6/1/2020. The name of the book we're reviewing is Sankara. It was published in 2019, and it comes in digital and print versions, and the genre is post-apocalyptic and ninja. Alright, so in the case of Sankara, overall the art was solid here. So the front cover and the inside cover both set a really good tone for the quality of the work and also the stylistic premise for the work. The inside is a black and white, and it has that like manga anime feeling to it, as well as the character designs do as well. So I personally really enjoy that. I think it's great that American artists or American creators are starting to kind of transition over that manga style and the into their comics and kind of integrate the two things together, the traditional American comic book style and creation, and then the manga and anime kind of like vibe to it. So I think that's really great for me personally. I think the character designs were also very solid. Each character looked very unique and distinct. Nobody looked the same, and for me that's really important for not only the reader but also as an artist. I look at that stuff and I'm like, wow, that like, okay, this person has their distinct identity, this other person has their own distinct identity, that's cool, this is cool, this is cool. So I picked out a lot of different things about each character that I really did enjoy. So the main character himself is has that really like great sense of just being like a badass, like not overly trying to be a badass, but just like his story is dark. He kind of has that anti-hero feeling about him, and I think that he is like a straight up franchise character, so he can definitely, just his image, his look, his vibe can hold up this franchise, and he's the kind of character that you could build around. Like your entire I think your entire universe could kind of be built around the aspect or the vibe of this one character. So he's definitely a franchise character for me, and I think that that's a great place to start with your first book. So that's really cool. Another good aspect in terms of the writing is that the story, it has great potential. You can see this thing going somewhere and having that like anime manga kind of loop around, where you get a lot of like philosophical depth, you get a lot of like you just get a lot of depth moving forward, and throughout the series maybe you get just a lot more building blocks to the storytelling. So I think potential wise it has a great room to move and to grow. And then I think that the dialogue, specifically something about the dialogue that I really enjoyed, was that it had like that swag. It didn't stick to that kind of clean cut aspect of writing that we do find sometimes, where we just want to be very grammatically correct and then put together these sentences that make sense to everyone. I think it's actually kind of cool when people diverge from that and say, you know, I'm gonna add my own linguistic aspects and affects to the comic writing because I wanted to have this kind of cultural or stylistic appeal, and I think that's really cool. And I think that the not only do we have a cool swagger to the dialogue, but we also have a really cool female villain, which to me is just a great place to start in terms of breaking that boundary, and this does translate, or it does resonate with the entire book and the entire culture of the book, that we don't have these typical characters. We don't have the typical male to male conflict. We don't have, you know, a typical kind of like a white or Asian represented as a white character. We have, you know, we have culture that's defined here, and even in the art style, even in the the character designs. You have that sense of style and culture, which I really enjoy, and I think that's a home run for me as a comic creator. I love seeing diversity, and I hate calling it diversity because it should really just be the norm. We should tell stories through the perspective of the main character, and those main characters should have a diverse background to them. So I hate calling it diversity in comics, but at the same time, I love seeing that there's a uniqueness that isn't found in other comic books. It doesn't stick to that stereotypical storytelling device. In the case of Sankara, in some areas of improvement on the art side, I think that stylistically there was a very strong vision for this book, and I think that the only problem with it is that it does kind of lose a little bit of distinction between the background and the foreground. But I understand that, again, it was a very stylistic choice to have things done a certain way. But in terms of the readability of the foreground and the background, firstly, I did want to see more of that background. I wanted to see a little more detail-driven kind of artwork when it came to the background aspects, because you're introducing the world that these characters live in. So it would have been nice to see a little more of that background aspect to it. I wanted to see kind of how they're interacting, where these people are, and then the different villages that we see, maybe have some distinction between those villages artistically in that background. And then when the foreground compared to the background in some parts, there is a little bit of muddiness there. So there's a little bit of difficulty reading what's the foreground and what's the background in certain scenes, and I think that the scene, like moving from one scene to the next, the transitions, there is a little bit of muddiness still there too. So you're not really aware of the distinction between this background and this background from this scene to this scene, or that kind of stuff. And then also where the character is in relation to the background, how they're moving in the background, how much distance they're covering with their movements and things like that. So it would have just been nice to see a little more clarity there in terms of the foreground compared to the background. But other than that, again, the artwork was very solid. I think moving into another area that I think could have been improved was the writing aspect of it. And this for me is just something that, as far as the introduction goes to the character, to the story, and then to the overall series, there's kind of a large burden upon the writer to not give away too much information, but also to establish some really interesting things that the reader, just the reader without the imagery, could latch onto. So what I felt could have been improved there was, I think that the emotional connections between the characters, just to give an example, the villain character, she kind of swoops in and rescues this character, or plays that rescuer part, and I think that she should have been a little more defined as the surrogate mother in his life. So you have that really close attachment that he feels towards her, at least in the sense of wanting to please her, so he kind of listens to whatever she wants, and not letting that be something that people translate on their own. Like it was a little more spoon-fed, that this is the relationship that they have. I think that would have been great for the reader, because it does form that attachment, and then once that attachment is broken, or once the betrayal is had, basically, then you have more of that emotional reaction to it. And then on the same token, having the clan leader be his father figure, and having maybe some more smaller moments between the two, where you establish that connection, that relationship. So when the action takes place, and the clan leader kind of takes a bullet in a figurative sense, takes a bullet for the main character, you have that emotional reaction. So I think there was a little bit of lacking there in the bonds and the relationships there. So maybe having some more scenes, and I know it is a little hard to do with a certain page count, and you kind of want to keep it, again, for an independent creator, there's a lot more things to think about in terms of budget, in terms of what you can and can't do, and then how that affects your storytelling. But I think if there was overall just to kind of slow down in the pace in terms of the storytelling, and then we had the room for those relationships to kind of grow, then when that that turn took place, I think it would have been a much more emotional connection, and there would have been a much more emotional investment into seeing this character through emotionally, and just where his character is going to develop, or how his character develops. Because right now his affect is a little flat, like he doesn't have much emotional depth to him in terms of his visual. I mean, you don't get a lot of emotional reactions. You get maybe like anger, which is an emotion, but it's just, you want to see a little more of the spectrum of emotions going on. He is a person. You want to have that attachment to this person in a more well-rounded kind of way. But again, I think it just comes from small devices, little things here or there that could have attached some more emotional bonding to those relationships that are very key to this introduction. So in the case of Sankara, I think that those were the hardest things for me, or those things may have been improved a little bit, and it could have taken the overall impact of that story just into the stratosphere a little more. So that would be the points of improvement that I would pick out. So in conclusion, just to wrap up this book in a nice, neat little bow, overall this book is a fantastic read. I didn't end up showing you guys the visuals for the positive part, but I can do that now. And so this is the cover, like I was saying, very distinct style, very unique, and very well done. And then when it comes to the inside cover here, again, you have very well done work, very stylistically distinct, and then on the inside pages as well, even though it's a black and white book, it has a tremendous amount of depth to the visuals. So the visually was really good. The writing again was very solid. There were a few little points again of improvement that I did point out, but in terms of the overall connection to the book, or the overall product, it is still in a very high rating. So if I had to give a rating for this book, I would still put it at like 7-8 range. So it's very close to being, damn near perfect. And I just really did enjoy the book. I think anybody will enjoy this book, regardless of their stylistic preference or anything like that. I think it is a very solid book. I think you should go and follow Akachi Comics, all the things that they're doing, because they are doing some really cool stuff with this series and then other series. And then just in general, go ahead and pick up your copy of the book. I don't know if they're doing digital copies of it. I think that they are, but or they should be. But if you can't pick up a digital, or if you can't find a way to pick up a digital, definitely go in for the hard copy edition, because it's definitely worth it. It's one of those books you can put up on your comic collection shelf, and it looks very good, again, cover wise, and then you're not going to be disappointed once you open those pages and get into the story. So overall, definitely a great book, and I enthusiastically close this case on Sankara by Akachi Comics. Definitely, like I said, go ahead and pick up their work, all of their work, because they're doing a tremendous job. The artist here, Nicholas Draper Ivy, he's a fantastic artist. I recommend that you follow his work as well. So just again, in conclusion, a great book, a great read. Thank you so much for watching the Indie Inquest. We look forward to you guys joining us on the next review, the review panel, which actually is going to be within the same episode of the Indie Inquest, because it's a 2-for for the Kickstarter that I purchased Sankara with. I did get another book called Denise from Akachi Comics, and this is also a great read as well, so I'm going to dissect that one next. So you're going to see basically another review after this kind of scene closes, and we're going to be picking up on Denise. So I look forward to doing that review. If you can only stick around for this portion, thank you so much for watching. Next up from Akachi Comics, the name of the book we're going to review is called Denise. It was published in 2019 also. It comes in digital and print also, and it's also post-apocalyptic with a slice of zombie. In the case of Denise, the things that stood out to me in a positive way were, first of all, the artwork is solid. It's in that manga anime style, which again is stylistically a home run for me, and it's done very well in this comic. You don't get a sense of amateurishness when it comes to the artwork. It's very, very solid and well put together. Speech bubbles, the lettering, everything, the composition of the panels, the panel types, the characters, the anatomy, everything is very, very solid. The backgrounds look great. I think it's again within that realm of that manga style, so it definitely feels very good to read, and it connects with that aspect of me that likes manga. So definitely a great solid job with the artwork. It's very clean, it's very thought out. I think the writing is stylish, just the same way that I felt about Sankara. It definitely has that kind of swag, or that kind of sense of writing that's very distinct and cultural. Not as much, but it definitely does have that theory of writing, let's just put it that way. And it definitely comes off as something that's unique, even though it has elements of like some cliche kind of genres that we've seen before. It kind of pulls everything together in a genuine way that you don't feel like is pandering to those specific genre styles, or like the typical writing that you see in those kinds of genres. And I think the main character specifically is honestly freaking awesome. I think that her power set is super unique. Her humor is it's spot on. I think it's dark, but it's still light enough that you don't feel like she's trying too hard to be that kind of character. Like, you don't see these like typical kind of lines where they establish like, this is the kind of character I am. You definitely have just this genuine sense that she has adapted to her role in this world, and she has the mindset of just moving forward day by day, and she's not necessarily planning for the future, but she doesn't have like that sense of I don't care about the present either. So you definitely have this this character who's very well-rounded, a female character, a female protagonist, so I've definitely enjoyed that as well. And again, her power set, and then as it evolves through the book is very, very interesting. It's very unique, it's very distinct, and I just really am attached to this main character. I really, really am. Even towards the middle of the book, I already was invested in who this character was. So that's a great, great sign. And towards the end of the book, again, I'm left asking a lot more questions. There was one major question that I had that I felt was this interaction between and it may be just like a universal connection, like in terms of the comic universe, universal connection to Sankara. So I don't know if that's intentional. I don't know if it's actually gonna it's gonna formulate into something. I don't know, but I did catch it, and I'm wondering if there is a connection between the two. So that was actually just a very interesting point that I thought, because you don't, at the offset, you don't see them connecting, but then to have that kind of like tie-in, or that little throw-in, like Easter egg kind of thing, that maybe they could be connected in the same world or universe, I think that was really interesting, and it kind of like threw me off a little bit, so that was good. It threw me off in a good way. I think it's great that the format of this book is again in the format of manga and anime. So not only do they have, I'll just show you. Not only do they have a book that has the stylistic choice of being manga anime, but they also put it into the format of a traditional like manga. So I think it's really cool, and I think it's actually pretty cool for distribution purposes, to distribute to other parts of the world where this is a little more common, and it's a little more like expected. So for readers that are global readers, I think it just resonates a little more, and it's easier for them to probably read, pick up, and kind of just attach to initially. So for distribution's sake, I think that was a really good idea as well. And I think that the premise, like I said, the premise of this world that she's living in, you get a lot of the cliche genres, but you get them mixed in together and kind of like this melting pot of ideas, but it's done in a very, very good way. So you don't ever feel like this is a genre specific book, or they're pushing that one genre over the other, or they're writing in that typical vein that these genres typically take you. So you just have this very, again, melting pot of ideas, but then it's taken in a very unique road. So I definitely enjoyed a lot of aspects of this book. I think it's definitely a home run. And so in the case of Denise, I don't have a tremendous amount of negative things to say, or things that I found that could be improved upon. So this is kind of a nitpicky aspect of me just kind of finding things that they were very minimal. Like I really didn't feel super strongly about any one of these things, but I think it's something that it did come to my mind, so I do want to bring it up. So one of those things was that maybe it's just a personal thing for me in terms of writing. I never like to oversimplify the introduction aspect or the backstory aspect. I can see where there's a need to want to kind of jump into the main plot points, but also I think that it's really important with the first issue that you do establish some feeling for that character's backstory. So you want to have some emotional attachment to where they came from, so that when you see them in the present, you have just a better emotional starting point, so you can kind of resonate with the character a little easier. And again, this is very nitpicky. It's not that something that I was really felt strongly about, but I think that they just we fast forward here a little bit through the introductionary stage or the backstory stage of it, which I felt like actually could have been its own comic. Like it could have been its own story, and it would be cool to actually kind of go back to that and kind of retell that initial introduction story from this major apocalyptic event to where that character then takes off from. So again, I understand why the decisions were made the way that they were made, but maybe it's me personally. I just like a little more of that introductionary story, especially since I think it stands alone. It's interesting enough to stand alone. So I think that there could have been a little more time given, a little more space given to that introduction. Maybe not in not in this book, but in its own book. So that's just something that I just wanted to throw in there. And then also, again, this is extremely nitpicky, but some of the kind of like more traditional comic book kind of like affects, like issue numbers, a more well-rounded inside cover, back cover, and then maybe some ads. And I think it's great that they included like fan art in the back, and like the back cover, and like the back page and all that kind of stuff. Some chibi art and stuff like that. So it was really cool that they included that stuff, but I kind of wanted to see more of that traditional like inside cover, back cover, and then maybe an ad for the next projects that you guys are working on. Like help me familiarize myself as a reader with more of the stuff that you're doing. So I think that would have been just a way to improve the actual like formatting of the book. But in general, this was really tough for me to find some negative points or some points of improvement, because I really did feel like it was a home run. So so that's going to be it for the points of improvement. In conclusion, I think this was an extremely solid independent creation. I think that the style, the way that the story was told, the main character, the genre meshing, and then the kind of unique path that's carved through those genres, it was just really impressive to me as a creator. To see something like this of a high caliber, it kind of makes me want to step up my game, and I think that you guys should be really, really proud of the book that you guys have created here. And not just this book, but again, Sankara as well. Maybe I was a little harder on Sankara in terms of the areas of improvement, but it's really just, it's kind of like when you see somebody achieving, you just want to keep like making sure all their bases are covered so that they can achieve at the highest level. So I think it may seem like I was less critical of Denise, and maybe it's just because again, stylistically, I feel like it just fits into that more traditional vein of I know what I'm getting out of this style. It's closer to the reference point of what I'm familiar with in terms of reading manga. So I just think stylistically and just artistically, it was just more towards that source material. So I really did enjoy that. But yeah, there wasn't a lot of negative things. It was just very minimal things about, like, maybe just a little, again, about the writing aspect of it, like the introduction and the pacing, but again, very minimal, very nitpicky. And then having just some of those typical comic stuff that could have been found here on the cover and the inside, all that kind of stuff, but it doesn't, again, distract from the value that's found inside the book. The cover art is really good. So in general, this is a great read. I would pick it up any day of the week. I would recommend it to everybody to read. Again, follow Akachi Comics. They're obviously making some very, very good work. They're putting these things together in a fantastic way, picking some tremendous artists to work on their material, and the material in itself is going towards a really, really well thought out place. So I would really recommend you guys look at Akachi Comics and follow them on Instagram, on Twitter, on anything that they do, because they're definitely moving in the right direction with their comics. And just to wrap it all up, thank you so much for watching the Indie Inquest. This is our first review panel. We plan on doing these pretty much every week. We might take some breaks here or there, but yeah, we're definitely going to be offering a lot more review content that's based, like I said, in the Sierra Nova Comics platform. So majority of the reviews that I will do, besides maybe a handful, are going to be towards the Sierra Nova Comics platform, which, if you guys don't know what that is, I would recommend you go to sierranovacomics.com. So yeah, thank you so much for sticking around and watching the Indie Inquest. I look forward to seeing you guys in the next review panel. As always, I'm Hilo. Take it easy, guys.